Ned, it's good to see you. I'm always
Nice to
honored
see you
to
too,
speak
Frank.
on a panel with you.
Peter. Thank you all for coming. As you know, today's episode of Partners by Nature is just the Fracks Mayhem, learning about fracking and public health. My name is Brittany Peterson. I am the Associate Director of PERC, Pennsylvania Environmental Resource Consortium. We are a statewide nonprofit that connects universities and colleges with each other, allowing researchers and students and teachers to work together and collaborate towards a goal of a sustainable future. So we're thanking everyone for coming today. Again, this is only made possible by our member institution dues and sponsors. And now I'll introduce the panelists, or the coordinating committee, Peter Boger, Peter Buck, both the Pennsylvania State, Lisa Davis, Rebecca Kishbaugh, Ruth McDermott Levy, and myself. Just a heads up for save the date. Our next two, or upcoming panels are going to be tentatively November 17th at noon. That's going to be the agriculture and rural health, followed by December 8th at noon, which will be on food security and public health. And now today's speakers, I'll invite them to begin with a brief introduction of themselves. But we have Tom Murphy, Brook Lenker, and Dr. Ned Ketyer. Thank you all for coming, and I'll pass it over to you.
Okay, thank you. Tom Murphy with Penn State Marcellus Center here, and I'm going to try to share my screen. Just bear with me for just one moment. It's a slight technical difficulty, just working it out here. Just bear with me.
And while Tom does that, just remind you that if you have questions throughout for all three of our panelists, feel free to put them in the Q&A in the chat at the bottom, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end.
I have an orientation issue with my camera here. Brittany, I'm going to have to, or Peter, I'm going to have to step out and restart this. I'm not sure if you want to, it could take me a moment or two. If you want to just move forward and come back to me, I hate to do that, but we do seem to have a technical glitch here.
Yeah, why don't we move forward and we'll ask Brooke to start, and then we'll come back to you after Brooke.
That'd be fine. Sorry about that.
And just a reminder, Brooke, you're currently muted.
There we go. Well, I'm Brook Lenker. I'm the Executive Director of FracTracker Alliance. I'm based in Camp Hill, Pennsylvania. And I appreciate the opportunity to join you today and give a brief overview of the pervasive and far-reaching footprint of natural gas development in Pennsylvania. And during this virtual tour, I just want everybody to keep in mind the implications of what I show you for public health. And some will be obvious and some will be much more sort of insidious, perhaps. So I know we don't have time today to explore FracTracker.org, but I encourage you to visit our website and learn more about our organization and explore the issues we address, as well as the maps and resources that we provide. So this time lapse shows the drill out of unconventional natural gas wells in Pennsylvania from 2006 to 2019. So as of August 28th, 2020, there were 12,646 unconventional wells. And if we go back 6 months or so, I think to February 2020, there were over 106,000 gas and oil wells, conventional and unconventional, in the state of Pennsylvania. So also, as of August 28th, 2020, Pennsylvania's unconventional wells had logged 15,603 violations as deemed by the Pennsylvania DEP. And so these violations could be spills, leaks, illegal discharges, and a variety of other problems. Now, some wells and well pads saw multiple violations, and we see patterns where the same companies commit the same violations or are accompanied by the same issues time and again. This map only shows a portion of this violations estate, and it's centered on Wyalusing, Pennsylvania. And the reason I selected that was twofold. One, this is a heavily drilled area, this part of Bradford County and neighboring Susquehanna County and Wyoming County. It's heavily drilled. And since it's heavily drilled, you also see a lot of violations, which are noted here in yellow. But the other reason we picked Wyalusing is because it's the site of a 260-acre liquefied natural gas refinery that's under construction. And here's that location. It's next to a Moravian Indian historical site. And here the fields and forests, even a old livestock auction that had been operating for a number of years, were bulldozed to build this extensive industrial development. But I guess the most concerning feature of this project is the fact that LNG would be shipped by truck and rail the whole way to Gibbstown, New Jersey, near Philadelphia, where an export facility is planned. Now, transport of LNG has unique safety hazards, exposing those along this particular route, this rail route, to unprecedented and really unjustifiable risks. Things like flammable vapor clouds, inextinguishable fires, and explosive forces similar to a thermobaric explosion, which is basically a catastrophically powerful bomb. And FracTracker mapped these transport routes for the Delaware Riverkeeper Network in their advocacy. And this one, Rail Route A, is depicted here, passes within 2 miles of 1.6 million people. And included in that number are 29% of which are minorities and 24% of which are low-income persons. And all would be in danger from this practice. When it comes to human health, air pollutants are often considered the greatest threat. And these images show the visible emissions associated with different phases of activity at a well pad during site preparation, drilling, fracturing, and completion. The work can go on for days and months, maximizing exposure. Water is one of the resources quite vulnerable to fracked gas development. Operators in Pennsylvania average more than 14 million gallons of water use per well in 2019. To put that into perspective, that's enough water to fill 21 Olympic-sized swimming pools. And at the same time, operators began to experiment with truly monstrous quantities of water. One well used almost 40 million gallons of water. Another way to put this, look at this is that that the 10.9 billion gallons of water that were pumped into fracked wells in Pennsylvania in 2018, that amount of water could supply the water needs of 300,000 Pennsylvanians for a year. But while water use is confounding and certainly compounding, the threat of water contamination is frightening. Exhaustive DEP file reviews by the organization Public Herald documented thousands of homeowner complaints to the Pennsylvania DEP, many about water concerns. At last count, DEP had issued over 300 positive determination letters to homeowners in Pennsylvania. And when I mean positive determination letter, basically that the gas company has to fix your water problem. The report Keystone Secrets was developed by the Partnership for Policy Integrity with technical support from FracTracker. And we found that companies injected fracking chemicals, these secret fracking chemicals, more than 13,000 times into more than 2,500 wells between 2013 and 2017. Now, the toxicity of these unknown biocides, friction reducers, etc., remains a mystery. But if they get into our rivers and our water wells, well, we become the guinea pigs. So this is the Loyalsock Creek in its picturesque watershed, seemingly serene and unsullied. It's home to World's End State Park and miles of forests and trails. In August, FracTracker released a digital atlas on drilling in the watershed. In the creation of the report, watershed resident Barb Jermoska shared this very personal account. In 2018, about 2 miles from my home, an estimated 55,000 gallons of produced water spilled from a well pad ironically named TLC. This toxic fluid ran downhill into a tributary and directly into the Loyalsock Creek. On its approximately 2-mile path, the chemicals flooded a little tributary that runs through a rural neighborhood where children play in the water. Frightened residents gathered to question DEP about the safety of their private drinking water wells, and they expressed concern over the tadpoles and frogs, and in the deeper, shady pools, native trout, where they were used to seeing. So this is a map of the Loyalsock watershed, and we found that between January 2011 and April 2020, 2 conventional wells and almost 300 unconventional wells combined to produce 340,000 tons of solid waste and 1 million barrels, or more than 400 million gallons of liquid waste. Now that's enough liquid waste to fill, and I forgive the swimming pool analogy again, but that's enough liquid waste to fill more than 600 Olympic-sized swimming pools. A staggering amount of waste comes out of the ground when operators drill and frack in Pennsylvania. More than 65 million barrels, or about 2.7 billion gallons of liquid waste, and 1.2 million tons of solid waste were generated in a 12-month period from November of 2018 to the end of October 2019. This interactive map was made for Earthworks for reporting the waste issue. It highlights the distribution of the facilities receiving Pennsylvania's toxic mess. This is zoomed, but there are states across the country that are receiving our waste. And speaking of mess, every well pad has an attached gathering line. Every gathering line goes into a larger line, and thousands of miles of pipeline snake across Pennsylvania, slicing and dicing the landscape. All the while, catastrophic accidents are quite plausible. The explosion of the Revolution pipeline in Beaver County occurred on September 10th, 2018. And fire from the blast destroyed a house, a barn, 2 garages, several vehicles, 6 high-tension electric towers, and shut down a section of a highway. Thankfully, residents were able to evacuate their homes. And the cause of the explosion is believed to be a landslide, which occurred following several days of rain. But a 2018 FracTracker analysis of federal data showed that on average, each day in the US, there are 1.7 pipeline accidents. So almost 2 accidents a day. And these require 9 people to be evacuated and cause almost $1.3 million in property damage. A pipeline catches fire every 4 days and results in an explosion every 11 days. These incidents result in an injury every 5 days and a fatality every 26 days. So consider the problems and the people and natural resources encumbered by the Mariner East 2 pipeline. This includes the mind-bending stress and troubles of property rights taken away, and yet more concerns about water contamination. FracTracker recently released this new map of drilling fluid spills along the Mariner East 2 route. It shows 320 spills during the construction that started in 2017. Of those, combined 147 incidents have released over 260,000 gallons of drilling fluid into Pennsylvania waterways. So speaking of waterways, we studied Pennsylvania's iconic Pine Creek watershed in 2019. So this is a portion of the watershed shown in 2008. And this is that same part in 2016. So I just want to go back again because I think just to show you the difference, this is 2008 and this is 2016. You can easily discern the access roads, wells, well pads, and impoundments fragmenting the landscape. And keep in mind that fragmentation disturbs wildlife, it delivers invasive species, it diminishes the quality of beneficial outdoor recreation. Forest loss hampers the ability of the land to store and filter water and sequester carbon. Roughly 1/3 of state forest lands have been leased or have privately owned mineral rights. And only a portion of this gas development fairway has been thus far developed or exercised, meaning that more drilling may come without any further leasing. And more drilling certainly could be in store. Perhaps the most perilous period of the extraction boom faces us now. A dystopian vision of a petrochemicals and plastics hub in the Ohio Valley from Kentucky to Southwest Pennsylvania. The signature facility in this planned build out is Royal Dutch Shell's ethane cracker in Monaca, Pennsylvania, near Pittsburgh, which is bound to be one of North America's largest producers of polyethylene at a time when plastics are filling our seas and are coursing through our bodies. The hydrocarbon called ethane is found with methane, aka natural gas, in some geologic formations, like a portion of the Marcellus shale. Ethane is the preferred feedstock for polyethylene. The Shell cracker, like other crackers and all the infrastructure that's planned, will contribute notably to greenhouse gas emissions, which will fuel climate change. The build out will worsen the area's notoriously poor air quality and disproportionately burden low-income persons, persons of color, and vulnerable populations with their pollution. And to that latter point of vulnerable populations, there are 23 schools and daycares within 2 miles of the Shell cracker. So Pennsylvania isn't an island. Our policies and practices have repercussions near and far. The natural gas industry now uses thousands of pounds of sand per linear foot of horizontal well. The sand is a proppant to hold open the cracks in the shale. Thousands of acres of west central Wisconsin, some of America's most productive soils, are being turned into sand mines, in part to supply sand for PA fracking. Ironically, that part of Wisconsin is what Aldo Leopold's Sand County Almanac. And sand mining is a health issue. Silica dust harms the miners, workers on the well pads, and residents in communities near the mines or offloading facilities. Acrylamide used to clean the sand, it has contaminated water. So it's important to ponder, to understand the impacts Pennsylvanians have endured. This is a slice of Greene County, Pennsylvania, another one of the most heavily drilled counties in the state. This shot is just east of Waynesburg, and it's around 2005. And that's the same area in 2017, 2005, 2017. The well pads are tagged in blue, the compressor stations in green. And build out surrounds these residents. Our environmental health fellow surveyed area residents in the summer of 2020. And I want to leave you with a quote from one of those respondents. Engines are running full blast, shining lights and just spewing toxins out there. And you can't get away from it. You just can't. You can't drink the water. You can't breathe the air. You can't farm the ground. And you're stuck here. And on that note, I guess I just like to say it's clearer than ever that it's time to accelerate a cleaner, better path forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. Tom, are you ready to present, or should we go to Ned?
Peter, this is Lisa. We had a question for Brooke that I know normally we wait until the end, but I think that answering this question will be really helpful since it will, I think, be discussed throughout the rest of the presentations.
Sure.
Brooke, we had a question about the difference between conventional and unconventional wells.
Sure. And I bet Tom can probably give a more elaborate answer than I can, but it has to do with the depth of the well, the formation into which they're drilling. And it also has to do with the methods of drilling. So I think one characterization might be that unconventional wells typically have a horizontal leg not always, but typically. They also, when they're being stimulated, they typically are using very large volumes of water and chemicals. But a lot of the definition, I believe, has to do with the formation into which they're drilling as well. But maybe Tom can clarify that if I'm incorrect in how I describe that.
Well, Brooke, thank you. And thanks for providing a great segue to Tom. So Tom, I think it looks like you're ready to go. Thanks again.
Thank you. And sorry about the technical difficulty before. We'll try to keep the comments brief here, but I will start with Brooke's question or Brooke's handoff there. It's a good segue. What is the difference between it? Actually, a lot of it has to do with the technology that's used. The formation can be similar, but the technology where you're going into a tight rock of a reservoir and trying to tap that resource out, in this case, natural gas, could be oil, could be, a variety of things. The process that's used to actually take it out of there or extract it out of there is the unconventional part. So it's not the gas itself, the same gas, whether you're taking it from a conventional play or an unconventional play, but the technology and how you do it would be considered conventional or unconventional. And maybe just a little bit of description. I was asked, again, this is Tom Murphy, I'm the director of the Marcellus Center for Outreach and Research at Penn State. We work in the shale gas side. We also work in renewables, or at the convergence of the two, as we think about energy transitions that are occurring here in the US and globally. A lot of the work, most of the work that we do is here in Pennsylvania, of course, across North America. We think about the country and the North American continent, but we also do a lot of work in a variety of other countries globally. The comments that I was asked to make today were to give an opportunity to take us all on a quick virtual tour. We've been doing this using VR or virtual reality headsets. In this case, because of the fact that we're doing it on a computer screen and through Zoom, we're just doing it, we'll say, in the flat. But we're using 360 technology so we can actually spin around and take a walk through. We'll try to describe what some of the process looks like. It was my understanding that many people have not had a chance to go on a site and take a tour. I'm not advocating for anything that you're going to see here. I'm just trying to help you to understand what the technology is. And that might be more helpful as you think about some of the points of interest that you have, and trying to sort out the many different topics that have come up already and will come up in the course of conversation going forward. This, just a real quick start here, this is a site, this is actually up in Tioga County, north central part of Pennsylvania. Brooke was talking about some of the state forest land that's been leased. This is actually on state forest land. This will have multiple wells on this particular pad. You can see the pad is a thick oak wood covered pad with steel holding all that wood together. These are panels brought in after the well pad is actually engineered. There is a poly liner under this particular pad that you're looking down, and underneath that you'd have stone. Underneath that you have another liner. And in essence, any fluids that are spilled, any fluids that accumulate, and that includes rain on this particular site, have to be collected and have to go to remediation. They're not just discharged off the pad, but have to go to a treatment site. And that is some of the new rules and regs that have been in place for a number of years now. We can talk about details of that as we go forward. But for sake of time, just talk about some of the technology here at the moment. This is what's referred to as a triple. The rig is going to come in, and this is what's drilling the horizontal leg that Brooke was talking about a moment ago. Typically, what you see as a well pad is set up. The site is cleared, as it was in this case. All the different components are put down, as I mentioned just a moment ago, including the wood steel pad that you're looking at here that the company would be operating on. At that point, a rig is going to come in and drill a conductor pipe, and that's going to be the first. That's going to be 20 to 40 inches in diameter. Goes down maybe 20 to 40 feet. That's going to hold the soil back, so the company can come in and then drill the vertical leg, which is going to go down several thousand feet. That's also going to go through the water or the groundwater layer, so the water resource that has to be protected in this process. That's where, again, different pipes are going to start to be put in during this initial drilling phase. So we're talking about 2 rigs now that have been here. Again, you're looking at a rig on this pad that's actually the 3rd rig, the rig that's going to drill the horizontal. So if we back up, the first one's going to drill a conductor. The second one's going to put in the protection of the upper string, which is going to protect the water resource, and then go down to complete the vertical leg. And again, that could be, in this case, was probably, I don't remember the specifics on this particular well, but you're probably looking at somewhere between 5,000 and 7,000 feet. So somewhere over a mile deep. At that point in time, and all those are cased after they're drilled, then they're cased, meaning the steel pipe is put in, and I'll just spin around here. And you can see, actually, if you see the little red dot, you can see the pipe that's stacked over there. So that drill pipe and casing is put in place. After that's put in place, and cement is pumped down hole, and this is a high-grade industrial type cement. That comes back to the surface, so the return is observed. That has to set in place so that the drilling can take place for the horizontal thereafter. So it's a series of pipes. So essentially, I typically explain to people it's a pipe inside of a pipe inside of a pipe inside of a pipe. And the last pipe is the one that's going down and going to be the production string. And in this case, that would be the horizontal leg. This particular well, I think that horizontal leg went sideways or horizontal out about 10,000 feet. Now, there've been some in some parts of the state, in Ohio, for instance, that have gone out over 20,000 feet now from the vertical. So this is the third rig. As I mentioned, it's the more powerful rig that's going to come in, that's going to drill horizontal. This is a triple. It's holding 90 feet of pipe in a section. Those pipes are put down one right after another, or those sections are put down one right after another with a well, or with the drill bit on the front end of that. So that's what's going to do the drilling going down and going out in that horizontal. Drilling muds are being used. They're contained inside the units, actually in the back here. The chips, so there's drilling fluids that are going down inside the pipe. It does two things. It cools the drilling motor, or the drill bit as it's referred to, which is turning. The chips, or the drill chips, are coming back to the surface. The rock chips are coming back to the surface with that same mud. The chips are separated, and the drilling mud is then recycled. And this is a closed loop type process, so that the fluids are all contained in these bins, or in these tanks in the back here. The chips that are collected, they're just outside of this picture, but they're actually collected and put into tanks like you can see here. Those are what would actually go to the landfills that Brook was talking about just a moment ago. And you can see the collection of those tanks here on the site, waiting to be picked up and taken to the landfill. Actually, these, on this particular day, these tanks back here, or these containers back here, were the empty ones waiting to come over to be filled. Typically, if they have chips in them, they're on the pad, so they have the protection of the liner underneath them. How does it operate? There was a picture that was shown about fumes and such. This would be the diesel generation that would be on the site. In this case, it was diesel. In some cases, natural gas. So there's less SOx and NOx and particulate matter coming from that. So it just depends on the particular location and what's available, and what the company's policy is in able to be able to do that. So pipe is laid here. It's picked up. It's sent down hole. Chips come back up, as I mentioned before. Go back out to the side. So somewhat expressed what that process would look like and how it would run. People working at the site, if they're there, typically they work at 12 on, 12 off. So they would be staying in this portable housing that would be here on the side. The crew that would be there, typically in this part of it, you have a relatively small crew during the drilling process. So those, some are working, some are sleeping, and then they rotate out for X number of days, could be 7 to 12 days. They would go to wherever their homes are, if it's in the area, if it's in Texas, you know, whatever it might be. But again, this gives you an idea what a pad looks like. This is a very typical pad from what we see in the work we've been doing around the state. We'd be glad to answer any questions as they come up as we go forward. And one last point I want to make as we're still on the pad, people often ask, well, how do they make that turn in the pipe? So how do you go from the vertical to the horizontal? And what that is it's done by what they refer to as these drill motors here. And these are pieces of pipe, specialized piece of pipe that the bit is put actually out on the end. Again, if you see the little red dot, the bit would be put on the end, and this has a slight cant to it. So it might be 1 degree, might be 1.5 degrees. And as that goes down hole, it can actually turn that. And that's how they can engineer the pipe going from a vertical orientation out to the horizontal. And typically that's done over about 7 to 1,000 feet of distance. So the pipe is a lot more flexible over that kind of distance than you might think. And that's how they can actually make that occur. Next stop on this tour, it's 7 stops. So they'll speed up as we go. And I know the first couple stops are where most people's interests are. So just spending just a bit more time here. This is an actual frac site. And this is in, the first site was in Tioga County. This is actually out in Elk County. And the yellow cages here, so to speak, are protective cages that are put over wells that have already been drilled and the well heads that are actually inside them. So they put them over when they're coming back on a site and drilling again on a particular site. I believe there's 9 there. There's one that hasn't been drilled yet, but there would be 9 that either have been drilled or will be drilled on this particular site. I'll spin around here and I'll do this maybe more than one time, but trying not to make anybody dizzy. These are the actual wells that have been more recently drilled, and we'll go through the fracking process, which is what's occurring on the site right now. So they stopped for 10 minutes so that we could walk on the site and we're able to capture some of these pictures again in the 360 in the round, get an idea of what this actually looks like as it's all set up. So these are the trucks that are producing or creating the pressure as the water would be pumped down hole. Initially with some chemicals that would be in it. We can talk about that. In the end, they're going to have sand that's going to be incorporated in there. And Brook was talking about that a moment ago as well. And the amounts of water going down hole over time are going to be in the millions of gallons, as well as the millions of pounds of sand. Again, Brook was talking about that in some of the commentary that he made. This would be what's considered a zipper frac. So you have multiple wells. You can see the blue well heads that are here on the site. And these are all set up to be fracked, not all at one moment, but in a sequence or in series. And the feeling is that the engineering has shown that they get much better response from the formation if they frack them in a sequence like this. And if they come in, drill one, frack one, drill one, frack one, and et cetera, et cetera. So more companies, when they have this opportunity, have been doing this, not in all cases, but in many cases, and that's what you're actually looking at right here. The control of this is actually in this frac trailer here, so the technicians and engineers are there, and you would also have somebody probably in Houston or some other remote location that's monitoring this at the same time. One is a safety precaution, and 2, just to add layers of redundancy in the process. So the wells that are being fracked, some additional pressure pumping trucks that are here, chemicals that would be in this trailer where the red dot is, the chemicals that would go down hole, wireline trucks that you would see, this open truck that's right here, cranes to hold some of the material in place. You can see a few people on the site as we spin around. Water that would come in, water that would go out, the tanks in the back holding water, and there's most of the water in this case was coming in by pipe from a reservoir that they had built that had somewhere to the tune of about 20 million gallons of water. That was about a mile, maybe a mile and a half away. So again, this gives you some kind of an idea of what the process looks like. All the fluids that are on the site, again, all would have to be collected, whether it's a spill that may occur or a fluid leak of some type or rainwater that hits the site, all those would have to be dealt with. Then you can see other layers of redundancy that's put in the pads, this liner that's underneath the truck. If you look even at a porta-john on the site, you would see that type of liners that are around them. You get an idea of the berming. If you can just see where the red dot there is around some of the other trailers and trucks and things, again, as you look across the site. Brook had talked about the sand. So again, just to back up a step, what actually happens? I'm going to spin around one more time. So you have a wireline truck over here. And what that's going to do is the well has been drilled. They're going to lower down in the hole. They're going to lower what they refer to as a frac gun. So that's going to be a piece of pipe that has holes drilled in it. It has directional charges in it. Those charges are going to go down and out into that lateral component. And in a planned engineered sequence, they're going to blast small holes about the size of your small finger maybe around that pipe through that piece of production pipe. That pipe has cement around it as well to seal it in and keep any fugitive methane emissions from going up the outside of the pipe. So the idea is to create those holes. Then they're going to send fluids down, in that case an acid down diluted in water. That's going to go out into the formation about a foot and a half and clean up any of that cement from that charge as that went off. Now that then is going to come back up the hole as fluids, as the pressure is relieved in the end and the fluids come back. Following that first charge of fluid that has gone down hole, that being the acid, then you're going to start sending water down under great pressure. That water, as I mentioned, is going to be in those tanks in the back, as well as the pipe coming in. It's going to be pressurized and sent down hole, several thousand PSI, could be upwards of 10,000 PSI. All that pressure with the water going in these pipes, going up, and then going down into that wellhead. So you're talking about piping and such in an engineered way to be able to withstand those type of pressures going down, going through these pipes and then going down hole. Along with that, then once that water goes down hole and breaks open or fractures the formation, and hence the hydraulic fracturing commentary, then you need to hold that open if you're going to be producing from the shale, and that's the sand or the proppant that Brook talked about previously. In the past, that was moved around in a more open type scenario. Now what you see is sand coming in these containers. So you have less of the silica dust that Brook was talking about. So you have, again, a closed loop type system. So it's offloaded from rail into these containers, moved in these containers, and then the same type of thing put into the system in the back so that you eliminate that dust scenario. So the idea in all this, just like in the drilling side, is to eliminate the exposure of fluids or the chips to the air. In this case, the water and the silicone from the sand or the proppant having an air emission as well. I'm not here to tell you that that doesn't occur. What I am suggesting to you is the process has changed dramatically from what it was even just a few years ago. And this is very typical of what we're seeing on a site now from sand, water, and fluids that are being used. So I'm going to jump ahead here. Again, I'm sure there'll be questions, but here's a site that's finished. This is back. This is actually in Lycoming County, not very far from the oil sock that Brook was talking about. This is actually not that far from the farm where I live. The 10 wells you can see here, these are producing wells. Gas now comes up these particular well heads across, down this pipe goes across these gas processing units or GPUs. Any water that's in there is stripped out at this initial time. And the gas is actually heated or dried. So you're trying to eliminate any gas or any water that would be in that system. The gas then is going to go underground and across the pad and into this gas pipeline, and then that's going to go up the hill into the gas processing. Any fluids that are collected here go to tanks. The tanks in this unique case are actually up on the top of the hill because of the steep grade. They didn't want trucks coming in there on the top of this mountain in the winter. So they're collected at the top on a tank location. Typically, they would be collected right on the pad. Next stop in the process, as Brook talked about again, would be pipeline. You can see this is a gathering system. Just spin around so you get an idea. Typically, this would be something that's negotiated with a homeowner. There's not eminent domain on this. So with a gathering system, which is different than a transmission system, the gathering system, the gas would be coming from the well pads, which would be in the back. In this new line, which is being installed here, there's actually one in that same right of way as well. Topsoil put to the left of this picture and preserved to be put back on. You'll see that here in just a moment. subsoil put on the other side, again, pipeline put in the ground. And this is what would be going from well pad to well pad, or well to well, and then to the compressor, and then from there to the actual transmission system. Similar type of thing. This is very common on what we're seeing in many parts of Pennsylvania, including the one where we took this picture in Lycoming County. You're seeing a site that's been restored. So the well pad, I tried to capture one that was back in the woods to highlight some different things. If you were a hunting camp, you would be probably pretty excited about this. It opens up the dense cover. You can attract wildlife by putting in certain types of wildlife plantings. If you're a songbird, you're probably not very happy about this. You don't like forest fragmentation. If you're a salamander, you don't want to cross something like this. If you're a deer, you're loving it. But again, if you're a snake, maybe not so much. The other thing that we see on the downside is this also opens up for the chance for things like Japanese stiltgrass or Japanese knotweed. We'll just say invasive weeds to move in, and these new openings are in the forest floor. So from a forestry perspective, this is something that is we're very cognizant about, and very much trying to help energy companies as they're doing this type of work to prepare for this and to deal with this from a management and from a maintenance standpoint. Two more stops, this being the second of those. This is a compressor. So those pipelines then are going to compression. As they go to compression, which is what this particular stop is, there's 4 compression sites. Spin back around slowly here. Gas is coming in. There's actually a manifold up here. Gas is coming down the right of way, down across, in through, and there's emergency shutoffs here. Emergency shutoffs can be controlled from on-site in this particular control trailer, or if there was nobody there at any moment in time, they can be controlled through telemetry from another location, and they're monitored 24/7, 365. Either on-site or from another location. Gas goes in, it's compressed. Typically gas, it might already be at the compression, needs to go into the transmission line, which is about 1,050 PSI. Over time, the pressure and the native pressure in those wells is going to diminish. At that point, it needs to be pumped back up to a compressed PSI that would allow it to flow into the transmission line and to your burner tip in your house if you're using gas for cooking or heating, but all that has to be controlled. So compression is the step that maintains that, and you make sure the gas is going into the transmission line and not flowing back out. On the site, what you see here, these are 4 units. Each one of these has a large Waukesha engine in it, about a 1,300 horsepower engine. The buildings are built so that they contain the sound as much as is possible. They have these large hospital grade mufflers on the front. You have these fans in the front that provide some of the cooling. There's a radiator in between there. And the fan blades, for instance, are tuned for sound purposes as well. Last stop, and I'll make this one very quick. This is 5. This is a peaking plant. We were trying to answer the question, what's upstream of your light switch? So in this case with natural gas, we've done that as well with solar. We have a virtual tour like this for solar. We're working on one for wind. So people have an understanding of, again, what's upstream of their light switch. This is a peaking plant. So gas comes in, goes through these engines, produces power, electrical power when there's a peak demand, hot summer day or a cold winter day. So at that point, these kick on just at a moment's notice and produce that power that then goes into the grid and flows to your house or business as you would need it. So in light of time, Peter, I'm going to, I guess we're doing all of our questions in the end, and I'm going to stop sharing my slides and hopefully we'll have a chance to get to those questions. So Ned, I think it's all yours.
Peter, I'm going to interrupt for just a quick second. Tom, there were a couple of questions that were posted in the chat box.
Sure.
And one of them is still open. One of them is under answered because I responded back to them. So if you have a moment while we're still here together to respond back, that would be great. If not, we'll be glad to send those to you, but we certainly want to give Ned enough time to speak as well. Thank you so much.
No problem. I'll be glad to win. I'll do that now. Right. Thank you.
Ned, thank you so much. We're really happy to have you.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate being here. Now you've all been on a well pad, Tom has taken you on a tour. I can tell you that very little of what he showed you we see in Southwest Pennsylvania. The oak planks, I've never seen them on a well pad. Also, just to understand that the entire infrastructure has to be vented into the atmosphere. Any fossil fuel extraction or burning consumption activity needs an exhaust pipe, and that exhaust pipe goes into the atmosphere. So while everything on the well pad looked clean, I can assure you that it is not a clean process. And as a physician, I can tell you that it's not a safe process either for people who are exposed to the emissions. So quickly, let's review. By now, it should be clear that the real prize in the Marcellus shale region in southwestern Pennsylvania isn't the methane that we use to generate electricity or heat our homes or cook our food. We certainly produce a lot of methane here that's fracked out of the ground, but the real prize, as Brook was saying, is ethane, which is a liquid hydrocarbon, also present in abundance in southwestern Pennsylvania in the shale, that's used to produce single-use plastic, which, as you all know, is something that nature doesn't need any more of. The story of methane and the story of plastic begin at the wellhead, but that's not the only place where harmful pollution is generated. Air, water, and soil is contaminated at every point of fracked gas infrastructure, from the teeming diesel truck traffic servicing well pads that sometimes hold dozens of wells on them. You saw just before a well pad that had 10, but we have 10 wells, but here in Southwest Pennsylvania, we have super well pads that can hold dozens of wells on them. We have all those trucks, and then the toxic and radioactive waste that's generated at the wellhead and is disposed of in landfills and injection wells where even more pollution occurs. Pipelines scar the landscape. They occasionally leak and explode. They can corrode, and as I said, they can explode. Compressor stations emit copious volumes of air pollutants, fine particulate matter, ozone-forming nitrogen oxides, cancer-causing VOCs, radon gas, and greenhouse gases. Pollution continues at gas processing facilities that separate and refine the hydrocarbons, and then beyond at local cracker plants and other petrochemical facilities. Finally, while some of what is fracked here stays here in Pennsylvania, a large amount of fracked gas is exported to other states and also to distant countries with an insatiable appetite for single-use plastic. Brook showed you this map, or something similar to this. Pennsylvania is now the second largest natural gas producing state in the nation, more than 12,600 active shale gas wells on this FracTracker map that you can see with the purple dots. Most of the activity is in the northeastern and north central and southwestern part of the state. And most of this activity has happened in the past 10 to 12 years. You can see on the left part of the slide, Allegheny County has very little fracking because the city of Pittsburgh has banned the practice. The green dots show where several hundred compressor stations are that move gas through the pipelines, and the yellow dots are where the violations are, as Brook showed you before. 1.5 million Pennsylvanians live within 1 mile of a well pad and other shale gas infrastructure. 300,000 children attend daycare facilities within 1 mile. Fracking not only threatens their health and safety, it threatens everyone's health and well-being. In the 6th edition of PSR's Fracking Science Compendium, which is available online, more than 1,700 peer-reviewed studies and investigative reports found no evidence that fracking can operate without threatening public health directly or without imperiling climate stability upon which public health depends. So we've learned a lot about fracking since it began more than a decade ago. And the evidence is now in. Fracking is a proven and dangerous threat to drinking water. In Pennsylvania, there are many examples of groundwater supplies being contaminated and ruined during shale gas development. The evidence is in. Air pollution follows fracking because, as we've already seen, it is produced at every point of operations. The evidence is in. Living near fracking sites raises the risks for pregnant women and for babies. It shouldn't surprise anyone that women and children would be at the top of the list of impacted residents. We know that people who live and work and children who learn and play near fracked gas sites are vulnerable to environmental degradation and pollution from fracking. And we know now from abundant research in Pennsylvania and other states, and also from the grand jury report released over the summer, that people are being impacted and their health is being damaged. As I just mentioned, multiple studies now show that living near fracking sites can complicate pregnancies, resulting in poor birth outcomes like prematurity, low birth weight, small for gestational age newborns, and birth defects, all of which have lifelong consequences. The health risk to infants and children living near shale gas development is especially concerning. Children are not little adults. Their behaviors and interactions with the environment increase their risk of exposure to toxic chemicals. They spend more time outdoors than adults. They play in the grass and the dirt where the pollution settles. And every parent knows that kids shove everything in their mouth: dirty hands and fingers, rocks, toys, and food. And we all know how hard it is to get kids to wash their hands before they put food in their mouth. Children's bodies grow and develop rapidly, making their organs and body systems more susceptible to damage from these toxic exposures. Exposure to some of the chemicals discharged during fracking operations act as endocrine disrupting chemicals in the body. These have been shown to interfere with children's growth and development and are linked to major problems with cognitive and brain development. Children have a long shelf life, which means that they have many years and even decades after exposure to develop symptoms of chronic diseases and cancer. And we should all remember that poor health in childhood increases the likelihood of poor health in adulthood. Older people and those with limited financial resources are also at risk, as are people of color who often live in environmental justice zones close to polluting industries like the oil and gas and the petrochemical industry. Residents who have existing medical conditions like chronic lung disease and heart disease, kidney disease, mental illness, and children with asthma are at higher risk for having exacerbations of those diseases because of the emissions that come from fracking. Also, fracking jobs are some of the most dangerous jobs in America. Industry workers who are exposed to physical injury, air pollution, chemicals, and radiation may not have the personal protective equipment and training necessary to protect themselves and their families from harm. And we shouldn't forget our first responders. In the United States, the shale gas industry is not legally required to disclose the identity of the chemicals used in fracking operations. This secrecy puts first responders at a disadvantage when called on to respond to an emergency, and it puts their health and safety in danger. The evidence is in. Fracking brings noise pollution, light pollution, and stress. In fact, stress is a side effect of fracking and exacerbates mental health problems in gas patch communities. Crime, drug and alcohol abuse, sex trafficking, sexually transmitted infections, and traffic fatalities happen at higher rates wherever fracking takes place. And that's well documented in the United States and in southwestern Pennsylvania. The evidence is in. Fracking causes people living near fracking sites to get sick. It has been linked to asthma, rashes, headaches, and unfortunately, cancer. People who live near fracked gas operations report many different adverse health symptoms. EHP published a study in 2017 looking at health symptoms of adult residents living within 1 kilometer of a well pad. Sleep disruption is often the result of nonstop truck activity, noise, odors, and light while a well is being drilled and fracked. Headaches and throat irritation are also widely reported. As I mentioned before, stress and anxiety are side effects of living near fracking sites. Some of these symptoms look like nuisance complaints, but for people who are exposed to fracking activities and the pollution it causes day in, day out, month in, month out, and for these super well pads with dozens of wells, we're talking exposure year in and year out. These acute symptoms of exposure and stress can become chronic medical problems. We already know that children and adults living near frack gas operations are sickened by the industrial pollution. More than 170 chemicals are used in the fracking process, and we know that they can harm health. No fewer than 55 of these chemicals are known to raise the risk of cancer in children and adults. Radioactive fracking waste is another major problem that may also increase cancer risk. From 2008 to 2018, in 4 heavily fracked counties in southwestern Pennsylvania, Dave Templeton and Don Hopi at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette uncovered 27 cases of Ewing sarcoma, which is a very rare and frequently fatal bone cancer in childhood. And they also found 40 other cases of rare cancers for a total of 67 rare cancers in children, teenagers, and young adults. In Washington County, where I live and work, 6 cases of Ewing sarcoma and 30 cases of other rare childhood cancers were counted. These numbers are far more than would be expected in an area similarly populated over a 10-year period. And new cases keep popping up. Parents and physicians are very concerned that pollution and toxic waste from fracking operations may be to blame for this outbreak of rare childhood cancers. So last November, I had a chance to be at the State House with dozens of concerned community members. We spoke to Governor Wolf and other lawmakers and demanded a thorough and transparent investigation into the cause of these rare pediatric cancers. And lo and behold, 4 days later, Governor Wolf announced the creation of 2 studies to be conducted over a 3-year period by the Pennsylvania Department of Health. But here we are 11 months later in the middle of a global pandemic, and we are still waiting to learn about study designs and timelines from the health department. Meanwhile, in June, Pennsylvania grand jury released a scathing report about the harms to health, property, and livelihoods of Pennsylvanians living and working near fracked gas operations. In addition to proving criminality within the industry, the grand jury uncovered negligence, incompetence, corruption, and complicity by the Department of Environmental Protection and the Department of Health, 2 government agencies in charge of regulating an industry that has caused so much damage to public health. Time and again in its report, the grand jury kept returning to the fact that it was children in the gas patch whose health was suffering the most. The grand jury went on to give 8 recommendations that you can see on the slide for state regulators to try and fix the problems they found and so clearly documented in the report. But reading between the lines, it's clear that the risks from fracking are inevitable because fracking is inherently dirty and dangerous. And industry rules and government regulations will unlikely fix that fact. The evidence is in, and it's indisputable. Fracked gas makes people sick. It degrades the environment and the ecosystems necessary to sustain all life, and it accelerates global warming and climate change. And as you all know, climate change is a medical emergency. The health impacts of climate change demand immediate action, says practically every public health and medical organization in the United States and around the world. So I'm going to stop here by saying that children live in a world shaped by our choices. Well, we need to start making better choices for the sake of our children's future. And we'd better make them fast because, as everyone knows, we've run out of time. Thank you very much for your attention. Thanks for inviting me to speak.
And Ned, thank you so much. And Brooke and Tom, so appreciate your presentations and your insights. It's obvious that you all have given a great deal of thought and know a great deal about this topic. We realize that we are past our 1 o'clock deadline, but we would like to stay on for just a minute or 2 longer for those of you who are able to stay with us. We did have some additional questions that came in. I think, Tom, you had already responded to some of the others, so thank you so much. We do have one comment saying that building a reservoir to capture water for use in the fracking process still impacts the ecosystem in that it removes the water from the water cycle, affecting flora and fauna, people and farming operations, et cetera. And I think, Ned, you spoke directly to that in your presentation. So, and just wanted to make sure we all heard that. And there was another question, but I think that it was already answered. So are there any other questions? I see something in the chat. Someone just wanted to say, brilliant presentations. Thank you very much. So it's always nice to get some good feedback. I think that is about all we have. Are there any other questions? Peter, are people able to open up their lines, or should they still continue to put something in the chat box or the Q&A section?
People can raise their hands and we can unmute them if they raise their hands.
Okay. I have just a quick question. Tom, this is for you. You were showing the drill pads. How much acreage does that take up, roughly?
Typically what you're going to see, I mean, it depends how many wells are going to be drilled there. So, that's a factor. It also depends what the topography is. So, there's not a perfect answer to that question, but typically what you're going to see is somewhere in the order of about 5 acres. I think the pad that I showed you was pretty similar. Actually, I showed you 2 different pads.
Mm-hmm.
3 different pads, and they were in that range of 5-ish acres. I think the one might have been a little bit smaller than that the frac was occurring on. So it depends, but that gives you some kind of an idea. The other would be if they're putting some other component on that pad. So if for some reason they were putting a water treatment facility or compression or something of that nature, which is not typical, but does occur, that could also make the pad bigger. But that gives you a range.
Great, thank you.
And we have 2 individuals who've raised their hands now. I can go ahead and allow Paul to talk. So Paul, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question. If you're still there.
Sorry, Peter, that was an accidental hand raise.
Okay.
I didn't have a question.
All right, thanks. And then Caroline, you had raised your hand. And if you want to unmute yourself, you can ask your question.
Yeah, hi, I'm Caroline Burkholder. I'm Sustainability Manager at Temple University. And I noticed Physicians for Social Responsibility and some other similar advocacy organizations as being named as contributors and active kind of stakeholders. And I'm curious, just either from the Penn State folks or other people that are working in this space, if there's been a strategic or concerted effort to engage current medical students or med school stakeholders on kind of this issue with this framing as climate action, just based on the health impacts of fracking. We have a Center for Urban Bioethics, and I think this is what we might call rural bioethics. So I'm just curious if folks have reflections or thoughts on that idea.
I'd like to give a first go. In addition to being a medical consultant for Environmental Health Project, I'm also a board member of Physicians for Social Responsibility Pennsylvania. And we spend a great deal of time on the issue of fracking and the impact on climate change. And we do have outreach experience with medical students, nursing students, students in sustainability, graduate students in public health on these issues. Clearly, when it comes to climate and health, I think that we would like to see more put into the curricula of medical schools and nursing schools. And we're seeing some progress, including in Pennsylvania, but we need to see more of that. There are plenty of medical students from around the country, and nursing students as well, and other healthcare professional students who are actually quite active in trying to help solve the climate crisis, trying to bring attention to it. We'd like to see more, obviously, and I think this election is certainly bringing more people out to speak out, and we're seeing that quite a bit, and I think we'll see more going forward.
Thank you so much.
I'll just make a quick comment. You asked for kind of a range of thoughts on that. Real quick comment, we've been working with a wide diversity of students in our population at Penn State that are interested in topics related to energy. whether we're talking about those that are learning to be geologists, those that are learning about something that could be health or health policy related, or even some of our legal students. We've been working with classes of them and individuals over the course of the last number of years. So trying to expose them to what's involved in energy production, again, in kind of a diverse sort of fashion or holistic sort of fashion, not just any one type of energy, but a variety of different types of energy. What goes into it, what's involved, what's the good, bad, and the ugly that would be embedded in those type of discussions. We try to go through the range of those. So yeah, we've been trying to do that as well.
Great, thank you so much.
You bet.
And Caroline, I'll just briefly mention, because she's not able to join us today, but one of our organizers, Ruth McDermott Levy, is in the Villanova University School of Nursing. So if you'd like to reach out to her to talk about any kind of engagement with students in their nursing school around these issues, we'd be happy to put you in touch with her.
Wonderful, thank you all so much, especially Peter. I know I caught her presentation just last month, and it's great to see folks from all over these massive institutions contributing. So thanks again. Have a good one.
So I think that we are probably at the point now where we need to close things out. I'm sure that folks need to be getting on to the things that they have scheduled for the afternoon. There are two more questions in the Q&A section. And so if our presenters wouldn't mind just taking a look at those. One is discussing radioactive materials and other contaminants, especially coming from the chips that are removed from the fracking site. And then someone else had asked about specific resources available to students who are interested in this topic. So going back to the previous discussion that we had. Peter has put up information about a survey that we'd like everyone to take. We really would like for you to respond to the survey because we look at those very carefully. We want to make sure that the programs that we're putting together meet the needs and interests of those across the state. And at this point, I would so like to thank our presenters. We greatly appreciate not only the time and attention that you gave to us today, but the time and attention that you are giving to this topic and for being so willing to share your knowledge, insight, and information with us. So thank you very, very much. And we will look forward to seeing all of you, we hope, on November 7th, when we're going to be talking about agricultural safety and health and the intersection with climate and environmental health, which I think relates very closely to what we were talking about today. No, November 17th, Peter says, so he knows a lot more than I do. All right, thank you, everyone, and we will look forward to seeing you on our next webinar. Take good care now, everyone. Bye-bye.